Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inter, welcome back to the channel. So just a quick update on all of the small patches that have been released for Smite 2 over the course of the last week or so for the Closed Alpha 3 update. And with these patches, they're sort of a mix of bug fixes and actual important balance changes and stuff like that. So I'm not going to cover the bug fixes all too much, but we are going to cover the balance changes that are being made. Because honestly, a couple of these patches have really impacted the game dramatically, but people probably don't know about them. So I thought I would just cover them in a video like this. And as I said before, let me know what kind of format you think is best for this, whether covering it in the next patch notes or covering them weekly or whatever, or maybe even as they come out, because some of these patches are very important for the game actually. So first up with Baron Samedi, they're giving him a couple of nerfs and also a couple of fixes that are effectively nerfs. So they've updated ability descriptions, fixed an issue where debuffs were stacking incorrectly on Vivid Gaze, resulting in excessive reduction. So yeah, this thing was applying far too much of the reduction that it should, I believe, attack speed or something like that. And then they've also fixed an issue where power and attack speed reduction was being calculated from item physical protections twice on this ability. So that's a really important one, because this is extremely strong, and we were seeing people being reduced from 60 strength and int down to almost 0 by this ability. It was making Baron extremely broken. There's a lot of other things that are pretty broken about him at the moment, but this was a big one, so that's been fixed. Wrap it up, they've adjusted the projectile to be more accurate and feel faster, so if you're having some feels issues with Baron's 3, that should be fixed as well. Baron's Brew, they have decreased the healing per second from 22 to 18, and they've also decreased the damage from 50 plus 15 per level to 40 plus 13 per level. So yeah, I think this makes sense. Baron's Brew, very strong, honestly, very strong. The amount of damage it's actually putting out, considering it's just free, especially for melee characters that can use it to poke from range, it's kind of silly. You can use it for extra clear. So yeah, that's good to see. Yamoja, they have fixed an issue where Phantom Shell wasn't working with her ultimate, so that's good. They've also fixed an issue where the range increase was not being applied correctly on Moonstrike. Thanatos, they're giving in some buffs. So Death Scythe, 10% more strength scaling, and Soul Reap also 10% more strength scaling. I think this does make sense. It does feel especially Death Scythe, Soul Reap maybe so as well, but especially Death Scythe really doesn't hit the same that it does in Smite 1. I'm not entirely sure why, but it really feels like it just doesn't have the same impact. It doesn't have the same ridiculous damage that you see it put out in Smite 1, so this is good. Odin nerfs as well, also good. Odin's kind of ridiculous even after this nerf that was applied a couple of days ago. So they have decreased the shield health scaling on Raven Shout from 50% strength and 55% int to now 40% strength and 50% int. So it's still going to scale much more heavily with int, but yeah, they've nerfed it 10% and 5% there. And they've also fixed an issue where it would hit enemy gods while they were mid-leap. Susano has also got some nerfs. Susano, one of the top junglers right now, does an absolute crap ton of damage. So basically on Stormcatter, they have just decreased the damage pretty much across the board on all of the hits. So they've taken off 5 base damage off of every hit and 5% strength scaling off of every hit as well. So in total, when you're using the entire form of this ability, you've lost 15% strength scaling and 15 base damage. Moving on to some item changes though, Ruinous Poison, which is the anti-heal tier 1 item, they have decreased the cost from 500 to 300, so that's now a very cheap tier 1. You could potentially even look at, just buying this for a little bit of anti-heal if you wanted to, and just kind of holding it in your build and maybe either selling it later or building it into something else. Ruinous Venom gets 200 off, and Ruinous Ant gets 200 off as well, so for the tier 2 and tier 3 also getting that change. Brawler's Beatstick, they have adjusted the recipe from Scaregox and Ruinous Venom to Lucerne Hammer and Ruinous Venom, so it's still going to be obviously Ruinous Venom, it's the anti-heal item, but they've decreased the cost by 200 but the strength by 15, but also added 5% penetration to it. So this is interesting. Obviously a lot of the reason why anti-heal is so valuable and easy to pick up in Smite 1 is that it has flat pen on it. They're not adding flat pen to brawlers, but they are adding a little bit of percent pen to be a little bit more useful. Divine Ruin also gets a 200 gold cost reduction, so all of these changes really are just in line with making anti-heal a bit stronger. Lifesteal is very prevalent at the moment. They don't quite have any team healers in yet, but if team healers are going to be coming soon, they're going to want anti-heal to be in a good place to make sure they're not completely broken, so they're just adjusting some of the anti-heal upwards a little bit, making it more accessible and more powerful. Sunbeam Bow, the new item they introduced recently that creates 2 projectiles along the side of your basic attack. They have decreased the cost of that by 250 and also given it more mana regen. The mana regen is obviously important because you lower your mana per second while you're using the effect. And yeah, 250 gold cost reduction is now no longer a luxury item really, it's sort of a mid-tier price item. And then Avenging Blade, they have decreased the strength from 50 to 40. This is the item where you get a sort of stone cutting sword plus slow, a bit of a mini stone cutting and frostbound effect when you're hitting people in the jungle with it. And this item was really popular, so it's been nerfed down by 10 strength. Moving on though, in another patch, they increased Odin's Ring of Spears cooldown. It was 110 going down to 90 in the late game. Rank 5, it's now going to be 110 seconds at all ranks, so that's really good. good. This ultimate obviously incredibly powerful. And Odin a bit ridiculous in Smite 2 at the moment, so it makes sense that you would nerf this ultimate cooldown. It really does feel like one that should be on above 90 seconds at all times, just because of how impactful it can be, especially with the current God offering in Smite 2, where a lot of them can't easily escape the ring without a relic or an ultimate. And finally, for the CA3 mini patches that are out as of right now when I'm making this video, there's been a big patch sort of overhauling CDR a little bit. So, first up, we'll talk about the new change. They've just decreased her soldier health from 200 plus 20% of her health. It's now 100 plus 25% of her health. So they're going to scale up if you're building full damage Nuwa to roughly about the same amount of health by late game, but it's just going to be a little bit less oppressive when you have like one rank in the soldiers, your very early levels, like level 3 or whatever, and you just, they basically become unkillable, the soldiers. So yeah, in the early game, they're going to be a lot less unkillable now, but in the late game, they'll have basically the same amount of health. And also, if you do want to build some health on Nuwa, I guess you can scale them a little bit more effectively now because it's 25 instead of 20%. But yeah, moving on, the main part of this mini patch is completely overhauling CDR. So in the regular CA3 update, they increased all of the CDR availability in the game by like roughly 20 to 30%. A lot of items that were 20 cooldown rate went to 30, and a lot of items that were 10 cooldown rate went to either 15 or 20. So they just increased the overall availability of CDR in the game by an absolute crap ton, and it created some major problems. Obviously, this is stuff that they have to test out. This is the best time to do it in an alpha phase. With the uncapped cooldown rate, it's a very different system, much harder to balance compared to Smite 1 in terms of just, you know, you hit your 40% CDR cap and then you're done. In Smite 2, you can get as much cooldown rate as you really want to, and it just has diminishing returns, so you've got to kind of like feel out, you know, how much should these items have, how much should you realistically be able to get in a build, because obviously if you end up at a ridiculous amount like 400 cooldown rate, you're gonna have 80% cooldown reduction, and then you're playing a match of the day game mode, and you don't really want that. But you also don't want it to be completely useless where it's not really affecting your ability cooldowns at all. And prior to this patch, it was deemed to be a little bit underpowered, but after CA3, it was definitely way too overpowered. And so basically what they're doing in this patch, or what they have done in this patch, it's already out. That's the beauty of these updates. They basically just releasing them as they're ready. And this one came out yesterday, so if you've been playing Smite 2 yesterday or today, you'll have felt these changes already, but I just thought I would go over the notes. So yeah, basically what they're trying to do is bring CDR to a middle ground of where it was prior to CA3 and where it was in CA3. So a lot of items that were like 20 cooldown rate and went to 30, they're now going to be at 25. And they're going to be adjusting around, taking CDR off of some items, adding it onto a couple of different ones, and shifting the stats around and stuff. So a Helm of Darkness, this is the active go invisible item. They have decreased the cost by 100, decreased the imp by 30, but added 10 more of each prots onto it. So this is going to be a little bit more of a tank item now. You're still going to get a lot of ints, so it's more so like bruiser than it is tank, but I do feel like this makes a little bit more sense. Tanks being able to like Helm of Darkness into the backline and then drop a massive like AoE CC. I feel like that's a little more applicable because backliners, yes, they can use the stealth to get away, but I feel like using the stealth to get in is the better application of it. And squishies aren't really going to want to do that. They're not going to want to stealth into an entire team and then let something rip because they'll probably instantly die, whereas tanks won't. So this is going to make it a little bit more appealing as like a bruiser item to int tanks. Chronos Pendant, they have increased the cost by 100, decreased the imp by 10, and decreased the cooldown rate by 5. So Chronos Pendant was one of the bigger offenders of like the massive cooldown rate bust when it went from 20 to 30 in CA3. And of course, Chronos Pendant has flat cooldown reduction on it as well, 1 every 10 seconds. So the more cooldown rate you have, the more Chronos Pendant's effect is powerful. Because if your ability has a base 10-second cooldown, you're getting 1/10 off of that cooldown. But if your ability has a base 5-second cooldown, you're getting 1/5 off of that cooldown every 10 seconds. So Chronos Pendant definitely, as CDR is much stronger, Chronos Pendant becomes disproportionately more strong because of its passive. Breastplate of Valor, another very popular one. This was sort of like what Chronos Pendant was to squishies, Breastplate was to tanks. There were a lot of tanks going Breastplate when it was at 30 cooldown rate prior to this patch. So they've increased the cost by 50, decreased the prots by 5, and decreased the cooldown rate again in line with what they're going to be doing to a lot of these 30 items, 30 down to 25, the middle ground from where it was prior to CA3 and where it was on CA3. Jotun's Revenge, they've decreased the strength by 5 and the cooldown rate by 5. Totem of Death, they've decreased the cooldown rate by 10. So they said on the Titan Talker that this is because this item is not really meant to be a cooldown rate item in particular. It's the item where like it's sort of like Old Spear of the Magus, except it's percent pen based instead of a flat pen based compared to Old Spear of the Magus. Basically, every time you hit someone with an ability, you get 10% pen up to 3 stacks. So it's really good on tick damage. And that's kind of like the idea of the item. It's meant to be that like I'm going to do tick damage, or I'm going to do a lot of repeated damage to you, and I'm going to get that percent pen. It's not really a cooldown rate item in particular. And so yeah, they've hit the cooldown rate a little bit more heavily with that one, but they've not really affected any other aspects of the item. Sands of Time, they have taken it down from 20 to 15. This makes a lot of sense. 20 cooldown rate on a starter item that costs like, what, 500-600 gold? You have from minute 1, it was just incredibly powerful to get 20 cooldown rate from that. Leviathan's Hide, they have shifted it, so they've removed the cooldown reduction entirely from Leviathan's Hide. They've decreased the physical protection by 20, but they have also added 300 health to the item. So this is the one, I believe, that reduces their attack speed and strength or something like that. It's like the anti-auto attack item, basically, and they have decreased the physical protection but added the health. So potentially, if you do need some physical protection in your build, but even if you're playing against a magical auto attacker like a Soul, for example, you still might want to like grab this, and it makes it a little bit more available there. Also, having a mix of health and defense on one item is always really good for your effective health. Lifebinder, this is a new item they introduced in CA3, where you get like you mark someone, and then as your team hit them, they heal or get a shield or something like that. No one really uses it, to be honest, but they've removed the cooldown reduction from it. They've added 5 int, 50 more health, and 3 health regen to it. Scepter of Dominion, this is the active item that stasises everyone. They have removed the cooldown reduction from it, which I think makes sense. I don't really see why this item needs cooldown reduction particularly, and they are trying to like remove some of that excess cooldown reduction, because far too many items in Smite 2 had just ancillary cooldown reduction on them. They have increased the int by 15, the mana by 150, the mana regen by 1, and added 200 health to compensate for that. So this is definitely going to be much more of like, you're actually going to get pretty tanky from buying this item. And yeah, I do think this is the kind of item that tanks will enjoy much more than damage dealers will enjoy. So I think adding some health to it will make it a lot more attractive for tanks to pick it up. Soul Gem, they have removed the health and added 15 cooldown rate. I think this makes sense as well. Soul Gem cooldown rate synergizes so well with it that it really feels wrong that it didn't have cooldown rate on the item. You know, you're trying to spam out 3 abilities and then hit the 4th one and get that big heal and damage proc. And so I think adding cooldown rate to it makes a lot of sense, and the health won't really particularly be missed. It was only really damage dealers that were buying this item anyway. Bloodbound Book, they have removed the cooldown rate but added health. So basically the inverse of Soul Gem. I don't really see why this item needs health, to be completely honest. But yeah, it is getting some health. They've removed the cooldown rate just to remove some of the bloat. Shoguns, they've removed the cooldown rate as well, added 200 health and increased the attack speed, the base attack speed on the item. This is not the aura. By 5%. So yeah, this is definitely going to make Shoguns a lot more attractive in terms of just a general tank item now that it has health and prots on it, which is really good. And like they did in Smite 1 when they had a similar issue of like cooldown being way too widespread, they've removed the cooldown rate from Shoguns. Cersei's Hexstone, this is the active item that turns you into a ball and charges at people and knocks them up. They have decreased the cooldown rate from 20 to 10. They have added 200 health to the item, so it's now going to be a 400 HP item. That's pretty substantial. They've removed the movement speed as well. They've increased the health regen as well, and they have decreased the pre-fire time with the active by 75%. So it's going to be much faster in terms of getting you in there with Cersei's Hexstone now. And yeah, as I said, that health being 400, that is, I believe, tied for the highest in the game now. So definitely going to be a very valuable item for tanks, I believe, in terms of an active. Necronomicons, this is the item that's sort of like an old Doom Orb style equivalent, where you stack up from getting kills, you get loads of int. This item gives like the most int in the entire game by far, but you take more damage per stack that you have, or you have protection reduction. Effectively, you take more damage. So they removed the cooldown from this one. They have made it 200 gold cheaper, and they've also decreased the passive prot reduction from 20 to 10 per stack, which is absolutely massive. Going from losing 60 prots, which is basically all your prots, you would just be taking true damage if you had this item at max stacks. With that now going to 10 per stack, you're still going to be losing 30, so you're still going to be taking substantially more damage. I still don't think this item's going to be worth it. Just losing protections is so bad. But yeah, losing 30 compared to just losing all with losing 60 is definitely going to be a lot more attractive for this item. Spectral Armor, they've removed the cooldown rate and added 200 health as well, so a very similar change to what they've done with some of these up here. That's going to make Spectral Armor a lot more attractive for tanks. The cooldown rate is nice, but having an item that has protections and health and reduction to crit, you know, you're going to get so much effective health. You're also going to be reducing crits. This is going to help a lot in terms of dealing with the crit meta. And finally, Pharaoh's Curse, which I believe is the item that silences everyone in front of you. They have removed the cooldown reduction, but added 40 magical protection to the item as well. So yeah, there you go. Just a quick update on all of the changes that have been coming to Smite 2 in the sort of interim between patches. This is something they're going to be doing going forward, so let me know, as I said at the start of the video, if you want me to cover these like as they come out, you want me to cover them like in a bit of a recap format or at the start of the next patch notes. But I think a lot of people don't realize this is happening. You know, a lot of people, if they're not paying attention to the game like religiously, they're not looking at like the Steam page, or like they're not in the Smite Discord getting pinged by this stuff. It might be relatively easy to miss, so I just thought I would keep you guys updated, because there are some very important balance changes that have happened here that they might discuss on like the next patch notes. Sure, they probably will, but I feel like it's very important. These changes hit the game immediately, you know, as soon as they're ready to drop, and they change the game massively, especially this one. You know, cooldown rate has been substantially changed in this update. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed me keeping you posted on this, and I will catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.